Hi everyone, welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the film from 2021, The Black Phone. Without any further, let's get started. The film takes place in North Denver in 1978, where Finny and Gwen Blake, two siblings, live with their violent and intoxicated father. Finny would always carry a spaceship that resembled like a pen with him and would never leave him, and he always aspired to work for NASA. Bruce, a Finny friend, was kidnapped by the Grabber, a famous kidnapper. Finny lived in constant anxiety, whether at home or at school. This is due to the fact that he was regularly harassed, beaten, and bullied. But his companion Robin constantly supported him and protected him from the bullies. Robin was regarded as the strongest boy in the school because of his strength and self-assurance. In a story about the Grabber that goes around the school, the Grabber would take away any child who called out his name. Finny was terrified and would never address him by name, while his sister Gwen was bold and would yell the Grabber's name with confidence.
Are you chicken?
During a lecture, Gwen was summoned to the principal's office where she was greeted by detectives Wright and Miller. During their interrogation, the detectives questioned Gwen about the dream she told Bruce's sister Amy. Gwen described having a strange dream in which she saw a man holding black balloons while carrying him in a van. Although the detectives acknowledged discovering balloons at the crime scene, no one was informed of this discovery. Gwen attempted to defend it by claiming it was only a dream, but the detective found it difficult to accept anything she said. There, we discovered that Gwen has her late mother's psychic abilities, which enabled her to dream about Bruce's kidnappings. Finny woke up to an irate father and a sobbing sister. His father was also hitting her because being questioned about Bruce's kidnappings and the timely information he had about them. Despite his anger and fury toward his father, Finny felt weak and powerless and instead comforted Gwen. Conversely, Robin was spotted being kidnapped by the Grabber. Unknown to them, the siblings were watching television when their father informed them that Finny's friend had been kidnapped. After learning of this, Finny shut himself in the room. In the meantime, the police were looking into the crime scene to look for clues. Gwen prays to God to assist him provide guidance through dreams that would reveal Robin's location so that Finny can find him.
That could help the police or me.
In the morning, the police knocked on Blake's door in order to speak with Gwen and gather information that might aid them in their investigation. As the day went on, Finny was being bullied and beaten. Then Gwen attempted to help Finny but was also battered. Since Gwen stays at her friend Susie's house every Friday, Finny would have to make the long walk home alone herself. When he was heading home by himself and suddenly he noticed a man dropping his groceries in, being a kind lad, chose to assist him. While assisting him, the man claimed to be a magician, and just as he was ready to do his trick for Finny, he noticed black balloons inside the van. When Finny went to check the balloons in the van, he was kidnapped, but not before using his spacecraft pen to trace his hand. When an unconscious Finny awoke, he discovered he had been kidnapped and taken into a spooky-looking room with the Grabber, the kidnapper. While the Grabber was speaking, the phone rang, so he left the room. When he realized that he was locked up and alone, he grabbed his pointed spaceship statue and began searching for a way to get out of the room. There, he noticed a black rotary phone on the wall that was disconnected. In the meantime, Gwen is surprised to learn that his father is called to inquire about Finny's whereabouts. She rushes out of the house and discovers investigators looking into the matter. She returns to her room once more to pray for a miracle. After hearing the rotary phone ring, Finny picked it up and heard the Grabber tell him it wasn't functioning. Finny tries to reason with him in an attempt to get the Grabber to let him go, but to no avail. He confronts him and demands explanations for the deaths of his pals Bruce and Robin, but he gets a bad response. He exits the room with a terrified Finny in his mind. When he notices a passage on the wall through a window, he begins to call for help. At that same time, he heard the phone ring once more. His body feels a glimmer of hope, and he answers the phone, but the other person doesn't answer. Later that evening when the phone rang again, he answered it and called for help. When he heard a male voice calling his name, He hung up and retreated, but he soon received another call. When he answers, the voice begins speaking to him. Finny asks for his name, but he discovers it's Bruce, who claims it was the first thing he forgot after he passed away. After telling Finny that by removing the loose tile he could dig a tunnel and get out, he ends the call, without waiting for inquiries. Each time the voice is called, a flashback of the boys was displayed. At night Gwen had a dream in which Finny was yelling for help by a door, and when she woke up, she was shocked. In an attempt to locate her brother, Gwen rode her bicycle and rode into every door of every home. Finny, on the other hand, started to work by creating a tunnel to get out and ingeniously flushing out all the clay in the toilet. One morning when the grabber walked downstairs to bring Finny breakfast, before leaving he forgot to lock the door. Believing it was a mistake on his part and an opportunity to get out, as he was ready to open the door, the phone rang. When he picked up the phone, the voice warned him not to go upstairs because it was a trap whom he later recognizes as Billy. Warns him that the grabber was waiting upstairs with a belt in his hand for him to be silly enough to think he could escape. It was merely an excuse for punishing him. When he goes upstairs and finds the grabber waiting for him, Finny comes to terms with the reality and slips back into the darkened room. After a while, the phone rang again. Billy's voice called again, telling him to use the cord he had discovered hidden next to the wall and utilized to go through the window. He pulled out the window bars, proving his efforts successful. After having dreams in which the grabber kidnapped Billy, Gwen made the decision to inform her father of the incident.
What if it could help me find...
While looking into the case, the detectives discovered Max, a strange man who lived with his brother, was overly involved in the missing children's case and knew everything there was to know about them. He thought he was involved in the case and that he would catch the criminal with the help of the detectives. The investigators left, believing him to be a crackhead, not realizing that her brother was the one responsible for the kidnappings. Max feels deceived because Finny lied about his name, and out of anger, he left the door unlocked once more. Thinking it was not a trap this time, he was about to leave, but was stopped by the ringing of the phone. Assuming it was Billy or Bruce, he began to talk, but got no answer. While waiting for Finny to walk upstairs, Max dozed out. And Finny waited for the phone call to let him know what to do next. The torch on his spaceship statue allowed him to see clearly in the dark room. After seeing a boy's bloody body falling through the air and pointing to it, Finny takes it as a sign and approaches the rotary phone and picks up the phone. He learns from Griffin's voice that Max's brother is the grabber. He also gives him the combination to the lock on his bike, which was engraved on the wall, along with informing Finny that the grabber is sleeping upstairs. Finny felt perplexed because the grabber hadn't harmed her since he was brought here. Griffin told him that he hadn't played the naughty boy game with the grabber because the phone calls would keep him safe and alive up to this point, adding to it that the grabber would not be able to move on to the next part if he did not hurt Finny. He moves carefully, like a feather, and manages to unlock the door upstairs, but is startled awake by the grabber dogs barking. Finny runs through the streets, making every effort to escape and call for help before being caught. When Gwen woke up in the morning, she was irritated with Jesus since she didn't have any nightmares the night before.
And don't tell me that...
Finny was devastated to be back in the room when he heard the phone ring. This time, it was one of Finny's bullies, Vance, who made him feel terrified and intimidated. He ended the call and then ambiguously declared that today was the day. With her psychic powers, Gwen was able to see Vance and hear the recent discussions he had with Finny. He indicated the location of the grabber's home, which is where all nightmares reside. The house number 77 for one that Finny was kidnapped. After receiving another call from Vance, Finny finds out that he can only use the storage room to get out if he is able to punch a hole in the wall and get out through a freezer on the other side. Starting to dig a hole with the toilet tank cover, he manages to do so and enters the freezer's back, only to discover that the door was locked. This completely devastates him. He feels worthless and powerless and is about to give up and perish in this hellhole. The phone rang for the last time. It was his best buddy Robin, who reassured and urged him to battle this horror and defend himself. He helps him learn how to use the phone as a weapon by packing it tightly, loading it with mud, and offering assistance After he perfects his swing, he starts working. Meanwhile, Gwen calls the detectives to ask for help finding her brother. After Max, the grabber brother, discovered that Finny was in his basement, he was shocked and was ready to free Finny. The grabber killed Max with an axe. He was going to use the same axe to attack Finny, but Finny beat him to it, injuring him. An enraged grabber chases Finny into another part of the room, but he trips over the cord that Finny sat and falls onto the ground where the window bars are, breaking his ankle. As Finny had trained, he swung the phone on his face, causing the mask to fall down. The grabber was scared since his face was now known, and he was unable to conceal himself behind it. As Finny was ready to choke him to death, the phone rang, and the ghosts of all his victims mocked him till he broke his neck and died. The grabber dog in the room was distracted by the meat in the refrigerator, and Finny was able to leave the house because he knew the lock combinations. In the meantime, the investigators swiftly after Gwen and enter the house, only to discover it is empty. They investigate the house and discover the grabber's victims' bodies in the basement. When he emerged from the door across from the one they were looking for, Finny and Gwen shared a touching moment as siblings. When their father arrived, he expressed regret for all of his mistakes. Police discovered that the grabber owned two properties across from each other. One was used for the grabber's living victims, while the other was used to dig up and conceal the bodies of his previous victims. As word got out, everyone breathed a sigh of relief because the horror was ended. When he returned to school, Finny had changed and was now a self-assured boy. He sat next to his classmate he was longing on and asked her to call him Finn.
Finn.
Thanks for watching. And remember to turn on your notifications to watch more movie recaps like this one.